Welcome back, guys, to Sports Prophecy TV. And we had some technical difficulties on the last video, so I had to just jump off and make some adjustment. But it's your host again, Jay Taylor here, and we're here to just dive into a topic that has been a bit taboo in the space, as we all know what's been happening with some of our local players who has made the trip overseas. It hasn't been as rosy on the other side as many of us would have thought. Today I have someone here with me. Siobhan will kind of help me to break this down as to what has been happening overseas, why some of these players are coming back. Is it the work ethic, or is it just the coaching, or our players are just not good enough? Siobhan, just dive in there and let me know, what do you think is causing some of our players not to be able to make that transition overseas?
Yeah, hi JT. Hi to all the viewers. Um, all right, so this is a topic that I think is really important. Regarding the whole players going overseas, especially the college players. We see a lot of players going to colleges overseas, and eventually they do get their degree, whatever, and then they transition away from football. It's a question that
Okay.
I have always asked because there have been a lot of persons that lot of players, potentially talented players that we lost. I'd say lost to the college system in a football term, but they went and got their degree and now they're living their lives. My biggest thing, I think, would have been the cause. I just think it's the technical and the tactical aspects of our football.
Mm-hmm.
And when our players go overseas, because based off players that I've known personally that have gone overseas, what they've mentioned is that the level of play when they get to colleges overseas, it's totally different. And they have to take 2 to 3 years to adjust. And then if a
Yeah.
school gives you a scholarship to play football, then if you're not up to it, then you know how that go. They're not
Let
going
me
to
just
waste
ask
their
you,
time because they
Siobhan.
brought you here to
Let,
play
let me
football.
ask you. Like, because this has been something really interesting that we really want to dive into. I remember a player out of Manchester High School by the name of JJ Johnson. This was a talented player in the Costa Cup that year. He was doing amazing, and he went overseas, and we heard nothing else about this player. Back in the day, we used to have these players make one debut for Jamaica after tearing up the Manning Cup or the Costa Cup. Do you think is that the Costa Cup, the schoolboy football league in Jamaica, is just too soft, and when they enter a more professional setup, the breakdown happens?
Yeah, that's exactly the case. Because I can give you two examples primarily that I was said
Mm.
when I just started high school. I'm not sure if you were in Jamaica at that time. This player called Ricardo Jimenez. He played for Excelsior. He
Okay,
was
yeah.
literally the he was literally the best high school player in the island at the time. That's when Excelsior was reigning. And that player, like I remember him come at JC with Excelsior. No one literally walk around JC. The man go
Yeah.
through JC, cut the lawn, the man do everything on JC, mash up JC. And then graduated from Excelsior, went overseas. And I heard that he's a successful professional right now, but he's not a footballer. He went on to something else. And another player, Ashani Walker.
Yes, Ashani Walker. That was another
I know
talented
him.
player.
Yeah, I know him personally. Me and Ashani play football at JC together. Like literally one of the best player I ever see, like as well. And then he went overseas. Unfortunately, he had an injury. I think the injury would have affected him, but he was the person I said that when I spoke to him when he was there, he was saying that the level there is totally different. And remember, he was the top player in Jamaica, and if he's saying that he went to a school and he said that he wasn't the best player there. So if you look at it, he's saying that he had a lot of work to do physically. Fitness, it's something that they don't mess with in the US. Because persons always get it wrong, you know. We might be more skillful than the US players, but when it comes to fitness, we can't touch them. They're
Let me
fit
ask you
because
even this one. Let me throw a wrench in your statement. All right. If you are aware, playing football in the US, if you're playing at the collegiate level, you have what's called if you're on a scholarship, you have to keep a certain GPA.
yeah,
So a lot of athletes tend to take little bogus classes like, personal trainer or massage therapist so they can keep up that grade point average. Do you think it's a thing where those players struggle to balance the academics, and then
No.
they
All right.
lose that development in the football realm?
All right. Based off what I know, based off personal persons that I know, every single person
Mhm.
that I know, they went up there and they got their degree. Believe me,
Okay.
they all got their degree. I'm not sure, I'm not saying for everybody, but everybody that I know personally got their degree, and they're all successful persons right now. They all live in the US, they all reside over there, and they have their jobs and they're good. So it's not like they crashed out. They went over there, wasn't doing well in football, wasn't doing well in school, and they crashed out. It's not a situation like that. They all got their degrees, so I have to give them the credit there. But I think what happened is that my personal belief, a
Mm.
lot of them may look at it and say that, hey, if I go college over here and I get a degree where I can make 200,000 a year
Yeah.
in my profession, instead of sticking to football where most likely I'll probably end up back in the JPL where me I make $20,000 a month. So which one of them you that take? You that take the 200,000 US a month, right?
But
200,000 US a year.
let's get a little bit more specific. I want to zoom in on specific players now that you kind of segued into that. A player like Omar Holness, who was a top player at the U17 level for Jamaica. He was phenomenal in that World Cup in the qualifiers, and we thought this kid was one of the next upcoming superstars out of Jamaica. What happened to Omar Holness, Siobhan?
Injury, injury, injury.
Okay. And is that is injury is him getting injured frequently? Is that down to bad luck or him
No,
not
he got
able to
what?
maintain?
I think there was a situation where I think he dropped down on the field or something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where he dropped. He was playing. I'm not sure if it was in the
I
US
think that's
or
when he was
over.
I think he was in North Carolina when he was playing at NC.
Yeah, I think so. He dropped down on the field. So there is some. So it's not even just like a injury, niggling injury. It was something serious. So
But but but
that's.
but Siobhan, is there any success stories out of Jamaica that had gone on to university, maybe get a degree and
Just
embark on
one,
a football journey?
just one, and that's Khadijah Shaw.
Kedisha Shah. Oh my God. No, I look at the college football system with Jamaicans are concerned, similar to the USL, where I think it doesn't facilitate the raw talent of
All right,
Jamaicans.
JT, this is the difference. US top talented players, once they reach the age where they can play for a club, they're not going to go to college. They're going to play club football. Our top players are going to college. That's the difference. So the US top players at 17, 18, they are being shipped overseas or they're being playing MLS football. Our top prospects are going to play college. See,
But
so you see the disparity?
wait there. But Siobhan, that means if our top prospects are playing college football, then every year in college football should be dominated by a Jamaican football player. Isn't that so?
Yeah, but you get the difference as to what I am saying, the difference between us and the US. The
Mm-hmm.
US doesn't rely on the college system to help develop their players.
Mm-hmm.
So when they realize top quality players, they have them sent to the clubs. Our top
All right.
players, our top players go to college. A college cannot develop a player just like a college won't develop a player just like how a club will develop a player. So that's
Okay.
the difference.
Penny, can you hear us? We have a college football
Yeah,
player
man,
here
I
with
hear you.
us. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show, Penny. So Penny is someone who has played in the collegiate football system in the United States. What are some of the things that you encountered are issues and the pros and cons that maybe cause our Jamaicans to fail when they go overseas?
One of the main things are indiscipline and lack of commitment.
Okay.
Lack of commitment and indiscipline. And that are two of the biggest factor that cause enough of the youth them to fall by the wayside when them come overseas. Because there's a lot of intricacy when you enter the college system. Because to me, college system is like what you call it now, semi-pro. See me I say? So
Okay.
entering in a semi-pro um, type of atmosphere, it takes a lot to deal with. And then
Ru-
you want me know, huh?
let's just run us through your time playing college football in the US. Did you play alongside any other Jamaicans?
Yes, I did. There was a several Jamaicans on my team, and when I started college, this is it now. And the first thing you have to get when we realize that the difference is with Jamaicans coming overseas and playing college soccer is the fact that you have to be disciplined. And the discipline start from, you know where the discipline start from? Showing up on time for practice. That's one
Okay.
of the
So you're
key
saying that
things.
Jamaican players tend to be on Jamaican time, you're saying?
Exactly. And that's one of the things that anywhere across the US, in any system, Americans have a thing where time is very important to them. Once you're showing up late, you could have been the best player on the soccer team. That's a no-no for them. That's a
Yeah,
Okay.
no-no for them.
but Penny, that is something that is
Yeah.
it's echoed all over the world. It's not just in the US. I think Jamaica is one of the only places where people don't
No,
respect
no, no,
time.
no,
To be
no.
honest,
Right, no, no. Well, no, I'm just saying, based on my experience, as a
experience.
solid that
Okay.
asked me, based on my experience, so I said time is a very essential factor for really being a part of the school and the soccer system. If you continuously
All right.
being late, that was one of the things that this is what's going to happen now. You won't be playing, and you're not playing. There's a domino effect. Right away, you might even end up losing a scholarship or your scholarship get cut. And now it forces you to do other things to make up that part of the scholarship if you're not on a full ride or if you're on a part scholarship. So it's a kind of a system where you have to be pro in these in a situation like that,
Okay. All right,
right?
Penny. One
So
last question, if you don't mind.
for me, one of my culture shock was that one of my culture shock playing college soccer was like after be up by 4:45 and by it take us like 15, no, it's not even 4:45, 4:30, and by 5 o'clock we have to be on the soccer field. By 4:50 we're walking to the field, and by 5 o'clock we have to be on the field, dark. We can't hardly see each other's. And the coach steps out at 5 o'clock on the field, and that's where it starts from. That's where the discipline starts from. That's where that shows you how committed you are for a soccer program. If you're showing up on time, if not, there's a joker. And for me, that
Okay.
was one
You
of the culture
touch
shock.
Yeah, sorry to cut you there, Penny. You touch on the scholarship and the academics. Do you think players maybe do the Jamaican players? You think some of them like come under a lot of pressure to maintain that balance between academics and sports, and those two things developing parallelly or simultaneously?
Oh, yeah, yes, let me touch on that now. And you said that now, that parallel thing we're talking about now, it starts from me with Jamaica. If you don't have that balance from Jamaica, from your grassroots, you're gonna have a problem there because guess what happened now? You're on your own in a college system. In Jamaica, you have different sort of leeways to deal with schoolwork, but you're on your own. It's 15 weeks, 15 weeks per class per semester. You have at least 5 classes That's like 15 credits or 12 credits at a time, 13 credits, and you have those classes plus you have if this is how it's set up now. If you have to travel, if you have to travel to play a soccer game, like you have to drive like at least say 4 or 5 hours away. You have to take that into consideration. That means that if you have a class the next day or an exam the next day, you have to be studying for that exam for that next day. But at the same time, in the present moment, you're traveling to a game, thinking about the game. If you have, you're thinking that you have to win this game. So that would along with if it's not even an exam, but you have say a 15-page paper to turn in 2 days before, 2 days after that game, and you're thinking, okay, I have to write this paper. After there's so many factors you have to deal with, and the
All
next
right,
thing,
Penny.
if no most of the players are working too. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's bring Siobhan back in
Yeah,
here. Siobhan,
yeah,
what do you think
yeah,
you
yeah,
can add to
Penny.
that?
Yeah, Penny. Just like a question. JD. About
Yeah.
JT. It was alluding to the question when we did the statement when we did make pertaining to like the US, what the US players them do
Hold on, yeah,
from the
break
college
up.
system.
Salis, repeat it for me. Salis,
And ask the
repeat it.
question. Ask the question,
All
Siobhan.
right, so the US players that are
No, it might kind of break
you
up. It kind of break up.
Yeah, man. I will repeat the question for you.
all
Go
right,
ahead,
so the
Siobhan.
US players that are that are more
Shit, man.
the US players that are the US players that are matriculated into the US team JT. Ask
Yeah.
him if those players are playing in the US college system or they are playing in the MLS system at that age itself.
He's saying that the players in the US that are matriculated, are they playing in in the MLS or the US team, right?
No, the US college, if they are
I'm
playing in
not
the
hearing
US
it clearly,
college
Salis.
system,
Okay. I don't know. You have to jump back off then, Penny, and jump back on. We were all set
Okay.
up, but I
All right,
think
let's
what
continue.
Siobhan.
It might switch up.
Okay,
yeah.
if you hear us clear, let us know. Siobhan, so I'm not getting you clearly. You're saying the players playing in the United States
All right, no, what I'm saying is that the US, the players that are playing for the US, the
for the
better
US
players for
team.
yeah for the USA, those players, I don't believe those players are focused on the US college system. They are more into the MLS. They are more into the MLS too, and they are more sent overseas to Europe. So
Mm.
those would be the US top prospects from high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas our players, instead of having their focus on professional football, they're sent to the US college system. So the disparity, what I'm trying to make here is that while our players are still in a semi-professional level, the US players are in a fully professional level. So that gives them the advantage going forward. So basically, we would always be a step behind because our focus is on getting our top high school players to college,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the US, their focus is on getting their top players into Europe or into the MLS. That's the point I was trying to make. So I think that is one of the issues as well.
Okay, okay. I don't think so. Penny, you could unmute your mic if you heard what Siobhan said. I think that there might be some truth to that. I think the US players tend to be more exposed to a more professional setting from an earlier age.
Mm.
Um, my time of playing under 16 football in Jamaica, you show up at training after school, and then in the summer you would come in 2 months before the season kicks off, and you do a lot of running for the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then they basically have what's called a tryout, kind of where the coach start narrowing down the team. I think before a lot of teams go into the preseason to the US, they kind of know who their players are, and then they might be looking for one or two players. No, let's just segue a bit more into the why there are so many Jamaican players as well going pro and going back to the JPL, which a lot of people would consider to be a lesser league. What do you think is the cutoff for that? Is it the same development or the lack thereof that?
Development, lack of development because the players are just not fit enough to be. Basically, they're playing in some of the lower league, like the Canadian League. I'm going to use Alex Marshall. He was seen as a top prospect for Jamaica, right? Out of high school,
I didn't thought Alex Marshall was a
yeah,
top
no, all
prospect.
right, all right, all right, all right. Let me say this: persons had him as the top prospect, but for me, Siobhan Stewart was the player that made Georges who they were at that time. It wasn't Alex Marshall, in my opinion. So he was seen as the top player to most persons. So he was playing for Cavaliers and then he was transferred to Canada.
Hmm.
Um, Now he's back in the JPL. Lamar Walker, who a lot of persons saw was a very good player for Clarendon College, exceptional talent,
Didn't
went
thought he
to
was
the
an exceptional talent either. I thought these players were all overrated. I
JT.
thought these players were a bit overhyped, to be honest.
Yeah, no, JD, hear me say, persons in Jamaica had them as exceptional talent.
Hmm.
That's a difference. I said persons, I never said you nor me.
Hmm.
The names I'm calling were the names of persons who Jamaicans had as the big ballers, so-called big ballers. Even
Hmm.
with Christopher Pearson, last year, would it be last year
Yeah,
or year before last
he played
year?
U20 last year.
Yeah, the year before last when KC won the Manning Cup. Everybody had him as his top player, and I was like, "Mm." And then in the U20, not even the U20, the club championship that was played, the Caribbean Club Championship that Cavaliers played, he
Hmm.
was a part of it and he was lost. And I saw it and I was like, yeah, so that is where. All right, the point I'm going to try and make is JT, and like hear persons that always bash me for it, are young kids, their focus is too much on education.
On education. Whoa, that's that. But would you blame kids coming out of Jamaica
I'm not
where
blaming the kids. I'm not blaming the kids.
hear me
I
out,
am
Siobhan.
blaming. I'm blaming the
Hear me out.
system.
No, I wouldn't even blame the system. I think coming out of Jamaica, we are programmed to know that education, getting an education, is very important.
Important.
And if you
Yeah.
don't get the education, if all things fail, you got an education. And I think any good parent would want to instill that into their kids.
No, JT, I am not saying that a child should not get his education. My thing is that if a child, not everybody in the world is going to be a smart person. Is going to go to school and get all the grades. It's humanly. We've seen decades of it, centuries of it. Not everybody will go to school and get subjects. So
Hmm.
my thing is that when you see that a child has a particular talent, instead of you try to put him down because he's not doing well in the classroom, you try to encourage him to say, all right, we see say you're good enough football, so you're gonna work on this. JT,
But
when you were
Siobhan,
attending,
I have to
hold on,
stop you. Siobhan,
hold
I
on,
have to
hold on,
stop you
JT,
there. I have to
hold on,
stop you
JT,
there.
JT,
Yeah.
hold on. I'm pretty sure how many persons you know personally that because they didn't have an education weren't able to play football in school, and how many of those persons now turned to something else because football was taken away from them? Just answer that.
What I have to say about that, Siobhan, is we don't talk about all the players that tried to play football and also failed and still went into something who had the grades. I know many great players who came to Homewood
Yeah, but JT,
and
but
other
answer
schools
the
and still
question.
failed. Hmm.
How many persons you know personally that could
Hmm.
have been good players, had the potential to be good players, but because they weren't so good in the classroom, they were shunned. Them call him Dunsbot, them call him Cruff, which eventually led them to doing things that they probably shouldn't have been doing. How many
No,
persons you know?
I,
No, how many persons you know personally?
let me break it down for you, Siobhan. I think the persons that I know who didn't make it in football, who was talented and maybe wasn't academically ready, it had a lot to do with their motivation for the sport and how motivated they were or the lack thereof.
All right,
I,
all right,
I remember.
JT.
let me just, I remember a player by the name of Pele coming to Homo Technical. This kid was amazing. He couldn't play in the 10th grade. He played parish. This kid was one of the best footballers in Manchester. When he finally got to play, he just looked as if he just didn't care that he was out there, and he was just playing more
All
mostly for
right,
the hype.
all right, JT. So this is the next point now. Going back to him, I'll say now. I get that, So seeing that he wasn't, because of his education wise, he wasn't able to participate in school activities, right? Schooling wise.
For the first year.
What yeah, what opportunities did he have then to play football in a structured environment throughout the rest of the year? Because remember, youth football in Jamaica at that time only played in the summer. So
He was
between all
playing
of the
parish football.
he was playing what is how structured is it?
No, parish football was quite structured, based
That's in
on
the summer
what I
alone.
know.
That's in the summer alone, JT.
No,
Youth
but
football in Jamaica. Oh, no,
again,
JT. All
Siobhan.
right, listen. I don't want you misinterpret what I'm saying to say that education is the main reason why not. What I am just trying to say is, JT, when we have a lot of players out here, because a lot of players right now in the English Premier League, they don't get their degree until them reach now them late 30s. One, because they're playing professionally, and then they reach a particular level and realize, so their time is coming to an end in football. And at that time, they would be able to fund their education. So what I am saying is, instead of you trying to stop someone from that young age, work with people, work with the children, because they're still kids, work with them. And our football needs to be played on a more consistent basis. We cannot be playing football on a
But
short-term basis because the rest of the world isn't.
I think you're leaving out one intricate point, as where in Jamaica, structured football is just not played that frequently. Structured football is played in the leagues, or I think schoolboy football at the youth level is one
That's
of the
the
most
point.
structured
Yeah, that's
level
the
of
point.
football.
That's the point I was trying to make. But the child that isn't able to play schoolboy football because unfortunately he isn't able to keep up academically, he
Get
won't have
into a,
the access to play structured football.
no,
That's the
that's
point I'm
just.
trying to make in a JT. I am not
Mhm.
saying that he has the right. But what I'm saying is instead of you trying to shun him and put him down because he's educated, because again, not everybody in the world is going to be an Einstein. Because if everybody in the world become lawyer and doctor, I guarantee you say nobody not going to take up no rubber rubbish.
Siobhan, let's slow this down a little bit here, and
You need
let's slow this down and let me make a comparison. There are brilliant students who are amazing in school who also don't make it at football. So the discussion can be had on both ends of the spectrums, both end of the spectrum, as to where who gets that nod. Um, I think I don't have any problem with that philosophy, especially at that young age, because a lot of times kids even develop in football in Jamaica, and then they go wayward at some point along the way. Where how many great footballers do you know who had the grades, played right through high school, did very well, and still end up going into gangs or going overseas or just getting lost by the way. So I
yeah, but
think
JT,
education is important at the youth
no,
level
JT,
when it
I
comes to
never
football.
said it. I never said it's not important. All I am saying is that don't shun those kids.
But what is your plan for those kids now? Because then you have to make the playing field balance, as the contrast that I just drew, where they are brilliant kids in the classroom who is not as good in football, and they don't actually get picked for the football team. So how do you balance that contrast?
You have a better structure of football in the environment. As I said in the JT, youth football is only played in the summer. So if a child doesn't have the opportunity of playing for his school or whatever, he won't be playing any form of football throughout the entire year until the next summer. So from September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, there is no football for that child. So just imagine what that child, remember, that child is already not performing well academically, right? And as you know, he will have a lot of time on his hands. And the older the older he gets, it's the more his mind will start to stray. Whereas if you had something in place to say that, all right, then during this time, after you leave
Mm,
school, when school over, you have somewhere to go. You have this to do. But when
mm.
those kids leave school, there is no football to be played because they can't play for them school. Them go home on the corner with them friend. So that's basically a lost mind. Whereas when you play with when you're at school and you play ball with him on the side, you can see a system of the talent. But guess what? He has no way of learning the game properly, developing that talent. So between September to May, he's not playing any form of football. So
Sh-
that itself,
Siobhan, let me give you a little quick rundown on history. George Bush. Um, George Bush is slated as someone who basically disrupted the U.S. school system, where he came in with a program that was called No Kids Left Behind. And what that meant was, you keep dragging along kids who didn't necessarily was interested in academics. And till this day, a lot of people thinks that that was one of the things that was detrimental to the United States as far as academics and the sciences. If you looked at the top ranked countries around the world, the US is way behind countries like Indonesia. When you talk about China, the Koreas, the Indias, and I want to tie that into football. In football, that's the rule of the game. For you to play, you have to have a certain level. Your academics, some would say your GPA. As Penny spoke about the college system in the United States, he said that a lot of Jamaican players wasn't disciplined. You have to get up at 4:30 in the morning. You have to be at the pitch at 4:50, and you be on the field at 5. No, that's where I went back to saying, Siobhan, the household that you were raised in and the discipline you were taught at a certain level, knowing about punctuality and knowing and kind of having someone to guide you, a lot of these things then manifest itself at a later time in that person's life. So I wouldn't change the Jamaica football system as far as high school is concerned. I would advise those kids,
no,
if you're very
JT,
talented.
no,
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 I
no, JT,
understand
JT,
that's not what
JT.
you're
No,
saying. Let
don't
me let me
misinterpret.
just finish the
I am
point.
not
Uh,
saying change the high school system. What I'm
yeah.
saying is that provide a better system on the club wise
But here what
so
I'm
that
saying, Siobhan, I was gonna finish up on that. I would say then, if you notice that your grades are not there and you potentially wouldn't be able to make it in the high school arena, then start seeking for to get into an academy. Maybe have some trials for academy. There's a lot of academies popping up around Jamaica, and some would
yeah,
say that
that's
the development in academies tend to enable players to kick on further in their careers. So let's not beat the horse on that one, Siobhan. I want to ask you this question: what do you think is the upside, let's say the average success rate of a player being developed in Jamaica coming through the academy system, other than a player who just leaves high school after dominating high school and entering university? What are the chances with those two comparisons?
um so all right. So you see, because the academy system is just being implemented on a larger scale, I don't think major because the only academy I think that would have produced any like players within the age group to have gone overseas is really Phoenix, because the rest
Yeah.
of the academies they're still young. So they haven't reached that level where they've had players long enough where those players are old enough to be playing overseas. The European clubs are not. So it would be unfair to make the judgment right now. But what I
Mm.
can say is that the academies are just exposing our younger players more than the clubs. As you can see, the academies they constantly have these tours in Europe, which is good where a lot of the clubs them himself different. But the clubs, you can see where the clubs them know these days they are more players are being transferred out. Um, Even though some players are coming back to the island. But it wouldn't be fair for me to make an assessment to judge them on a percentage basis, see which one would be better because we need more time to see when those players reach a particular age how well they've been developed comparing to the other nations within our region or the world itself.
If let's put you in the shoes of a football dad, if you had a son in Jamaica dominating
Academy,
a football,
academy,
the best route you would think he would should take is an academy. So what
yeah,
if
academy.
that academy doesn't offer that child anything as far as education is concerned? Would you put all your eggs in one basket and push the child in that path, not knowing if he's actually good enough to become pro?
All right, so you have different types of academies. You have academies like a Mount Pleasant where children go to school, and then you have academies like a Butler, like a Phoenix, where you go to your personal school itself, and then after school, you're part of the academy itself. So it just
Mhm.
depends. Um, I would want an academy where my son, if I was choosing, it would be a Mount Pleasant type academy, where the
Yeah.
infrastructure itself it's about football. That's if my son wants to play football, son or daughter wants to play football. My structure would be based off that. But if that's not the case, then because I know that in order to become a successful player, the player that we all want to be, you have to be playing football. Minimum for me at least 10 months for the year, minimum
Mm.
from a young age growing up because we've seen it, and it goes back to the topic of the whole argument conversation, where our players basically going overseas and then coming back to Jamaica. Our players from a younger age, our players are not developed in a professional style. As what Penny said, the mindset of the players when they go up, it's because they in Jamaica for the high school players, they come to school in the morning, 8 o'clock shift start, school start, them
Mm.
go home and then them come back to school. That's not how football is run overseas. Football is run overseas where before school you have training. After school you have training. And if possible, they would even have you have training during school hours. So that's how football is run all over the world. Now, we're in Jamaica for the regular kids. It's only have one training for the day. And Mr. Speed said it on Management Show the other day.
Mhm,
He
mhm.
only have team players per day for possible 2 hours alone for the day for training. That is not good enough.
Do you think it's possible, Siobhan, for a player to go overseas and apply their trade and potentially end up back in Jamaica and then re-emerge and actually go back overseas and become successful at football? Because I think that's a difficult path once you return to Jamaica. Um,
Jamaica,
that's
I think
that's almost a strike on your resume.
I think I think it is a strike, but again, it depends on the age of the particular individual. If the player is young, and fine, but I think once you reach like 21, I think it would be more difficult to be honest. But just the age of the person depends. But as I said, it would be like a strike against that player on that player's resume. Because being sent back to Jamaica is not something where anyone would want to see itself.
Yeah. But we also have to say that there hasn't been a lot of success stories where players go overseas and lot of people would want to say fail. They ran into difficulties and actually end up back in Jamaica and have a successful football career after. For example, a player like Peter McGregor, he was in I think
Sweden,
Sweden, and he was in the second division. I remember he went back to Jamaica and he was scoring a lot of goals, and the fans were calling for him to be in the national team. And I was saying that I think we should hold our horses, because if a player is playing in the second division in Sweden and he's coming off the bench and he goes back to the JPL and he dominates and then he gets a call up for the national team, I think that tells a lot about your national program and the talent pool you have available.
Um, that's true. That's true. But I think it's more to say like, all right. Let's use an example from McGregor. When McGregor came back, we all saw you could see that he was a more developed player than the players in the JPL. Defenders never knew how to stop him, and I think it even helped. The other guy that was there with him, Bygrave,
Mm-hmm.
because McGregor would have been the person where defenders would have been attracted to. So Bygrave would have had more space at time to really basically roam around. We're now, but the issue, because this is the same thing happening now with Alex Marshall and Lamar Walker. When they just came back, you could see the difference. You could see that they were playing in a different system where they were fitter, they were stronger, they were more technically they had more technical ability more than most of the other players. But now, as time has gone on, you can see where their level has somewhat probably dipped
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to some extent
And
because they've
what do
probably
you
gone
think is
back.
the reason for that? What do you think is the reason for that?
Old habits die hard.
Old habits. So the gist of the story, guys. I'm just gonna, before we wrap up. I think we'll wrap up in another 2 or 3 minutes. I think that players coming out of Jamaica, the college route is not necessarily the right path for me. That I think our young talented players should embark on if you're planning on becoming a pro. Also, I remember my first time on YouTube, I spoke about going into the USL as well. I thought that those kind of leagues and the style of play doesn't enhance or facilitate the abilities of our players coming out of Jamaica, as our players are more free spirited and they play a bit more off the rip, where they make things happen in games. And in the US, the game seemed to be a bit more structured and organized, where it's more a team concept, which football is a team concept. But I think what sets a football game alight is also seeing a player on the ball who's able to take on players and establish his dominance on the pitch. And we kind of lose that as Jamaicans. I would say they lose the flair when they enter the overseas arena. I think you probably have witnessed that, Siobhan, with a lot of our players as well. When they go overseas, they tend to play a bit different, play a bit more cagey. They look a bit more calculated. They're not playing that free flowing football that they used to. Though we can also say that the football in Jamaica is less developed, we can also see that they have structured our players, like refixed them in a way where I don't know if it prepares them for the next level for them to really kick on. I'm going to give you your final take on this one, Siobhan, and then we wrap it up. And thanks for everyone who's joined us today. Go ahead, Siobhan.
So yeah, as I said, I don't think the college route is the best route for our players. I think, if we're being honest, I think the best way for players would be for them to try to focus on Europe. Try Europe, try to develop, well, focus on yourself here, work on your football game. Stop worry about
Mm.
party, stop worry about friend. Because if you don't make it suck, if you don't make it, I see a friend, I'm gonna look on you and say, yo, you're a cruff, you waste your time. Focus on your craft, develop your craft. That's what's making you better. So you need to do what you need to do to make sure so you become the better player. So the college road, if the opportunity arises, review it. Look on it and say, yo, all right then. Well, if I go here based off my talents, would it be possible for me to enter the draft? Will I be drafted? Look at previous. We have a Peter Lee Vassell. He went down that route. He got drafted to the LAFC, and within a season and a half, they loaned him out to a point where he didn't have a club. Now he's in the USL.
Yeah.
So
Um, wow.
the only two successful players I've seen really are Mattox and Andre Blake. They went down that route and it worked for them. So it's just really you to decide. But my personal opinion, I don't think that route is the best way, to be honest.
And Andre Blake and Darren Mattox was probably two of the highest draft picks coming out of Jamaica. So their
Yeah,
stocks
Blake
were
was
really
number.
high.
I think Blake was number one.
Yeah, he was number one coming out of UConn, and he has basically lived up to the reputation. If you
Station.
our expectations, if you look at the league that he's in, for me though, I think he his career he missed out on becoming a marquee goalkeeper to go down in history as one of the top goalkeepers. Because
Keepers.
I think if he got to go overseas, he would have potentially got better coaching and he probably would have kicked on to become a world class goalkeeper. But as you can see, he's been right around the same level, just dominating in the MLS. And it seems like a lot of our players, Siobhan, tend to just accept the MLS as the holy grail in the region when it comes on to football. I don't know what the salaries are in the
The
MLS.
salaries, no, the salaries in the MLS I know are good. They're good because I know somebody who knows Mattox personally, and they're saying that when Mattox was playing, Mattox wasn't the highest earner for his club,
Mhm.
and he was able to be able to he was able to support his family and not just small his extended family actually.
Mhm.
So the salary for MLS player it's not comparing to the European salaries, but it's there, and it is beneficial, to be honest. Because remember, even you can even use Damian Lowe for example. Lowe got offers from Europe as well, but he chose the MLS.
I
So
think Damian Lowe, Damian Lowe touched on something very interesting in that interview he did, where he spoke about making the decision to play in a specific club based on basically his financial situation. So, is it safe to say that a lot of Jamaican players are basically choosing the financial benefits over a potential long-term
yeah,
career?
I've heard players say that before. I've heard persons say that before. Them have to secure them future before monetary wise. Them have to secure them future before anything. I've heard players say that before, so if that's not a secret. Players have said that before, even online and through the internet. Players have said that financial security is their main priority.
Since we're a bit on finance, you think financial education, um, even just the little, like a touch, like just scratching the surface, is something that we should potentially think about educating our players on before they make that move
It's
overseas.
it's not
Is
just
there
players.
your let me just
It's
wrap
not.
it up on this one, Siobhan. You're on the ground in Jamaica. Are you aware of any such what would say now things that are implemented in this way to basically assist players with some kind of financial education before they make that jump and let them know that the money will also come on the back end if you put in that work early on and become a good player.
All right, so I'm not sure about no, but unless there is something that's been done privately, financial education is not something that's really pushed in schools in general.
Mm.
So a lot of persons like financial literacy, it's an issue. Again, you have persons will make this amount per month and they spend even more than what they have. Financial literacy is something that really needs to be taught in Jamaica because as you get the money, it's like you get it for spend it. So a lot of persons don't know how to budget. A lot of persons don't know how to well that's you know to just relax to some extent. So it's always about and I don't think it's Jamaica itself. I think it's not really getting that, because that bigger than football
So
right now.
Siobhan,
But
like I know this was a little bit we kind of dip and we kind of dip and dive into a few things as far as this was concerned. Um, Alex Marshall, is Alex Marshall a testament of what not to do coming out of high school as a young, talented Jamaican player? Should
I
some
don't
Jamaican players coming out of high school start looking at some of these players who have taken a specific path and end up back in the JPL and say, me going forward, I need to basically be more
I don't
strategic in that move that I make after high school?
but I don't think I don't remember if Alex Marshall actually went to college overseas. I think he went to Cavaliers.
No, not college. He went to Cavaliers and then he went to
Cavaliers, yeah.
Canada, right?
Yeah. Um as I was saying, JT, it's hard to tell persons what to do because people are gonna listen. But if and as I said, to me, Alex Marshall, the talent that Jamaican said that he had, I never saw it. So probably that's what they probably maybe that was probably one of the reasons why better opposition never saw him, better clubs never saw him. Probably them and we have the same like eyes. We see the same thing, but I wouldn't say that's the reason why Alex Marshall isn't where he is. I just think his talent was exaggerated. To be honest, I don't think he was that player.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that that era for Georges, anybody could have played for Georges and look good. I think Georges was at their pinnacle, or
No, he
well,
wasn't.
around
You had
at
all right.
that.
You see, Siobhan Stewart. Yes,
Mm.
this is how I knew that Siobhan Stewart was the
Which
main
is
string.
what is this youth now? Is it which year did Benbow come out and that kid that scored that banging goal, man,
No man,
playing for
all of them you they come before them, man. They were
no
out
yeah,
before
that Alex Marshall is what, 20, 22, 23.
Alex Marshall. I'm not sure him age, but I think Alex Marshall time would have been like between 2010 to 2012, them period there.
And Benbow and those guys were what, 2009,
Think
2008.
Bembo them was I can't remember the exact year, but I know Bembo was before or
It
after.
can't be before 2009, 2009 season.
Hold
It
on,
it
hold on there.
it,
You have
it
the
can't.
internet.
Yeah, check it, because that's impossible. I thought Georges at that point, in a way, they remind me of Manchester City, where they had Neville Bell. He had a system set up, and they just look organized. And I felt that anybody you put in that system who knew how to play football would look like a football player. However, Alex Marshall was a player that people.
2013.
Benbow came out
2013.
at 2013.
Based off the news articles.
So then Alex Marshall is around 2015.
And so scary again.
So when you said 2010, I
Yeah,
was
for
like,
real. Yeah. Cause Scary kinda younger than me for real. Yeah,
yeah,
Marshall was like 2015, 2016.
exactly. So and when you look at it, 20 Morgan was another talented player coming out of Georges. He was a player that a lot of people
Marvin
thought
Morgan.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He-
I think such man killed the career.
Yeah, we thought that player would have been something else because he scored one of probably the most amazing goals in Manning Cup history, from probably 50, 60 yards out. I don't even remember, but that was an
Mr.
amazing goal.
Man. Remember the
Um,
first time Mr. Man when I play under 13. First
yeah,
time see him sign. When he was playing for Tivoli them time there. Yo, brother, that Mr. Man was a baller from us. I don't know what happened, but here's like because even when he was playing in the JPL for Arnett, he was arguably the best player in the league at that time, and he still wasn't being called. Other players were being called over him. And if you had person saying like, "Oh, what really happened between him and such man?" So
yeah.
I think all of that kind of. But I hear that he's in Canada now. I'm not sure if he's still playing football, but I know that's one thing that really affected that kid.
Okay. Siobhan, thank you again for joining us, and thank everybody else who stopped by to Sports Prophecy TV. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and we just wanted to dive into some of the issues concerning why Jamaican players tend to end up overseas and then, make a detour basically back to the JPL, because the success rate for players leaving Jamaica and going overseas and going back to the JPL is not very good, as well as the rate for kids coming out of university in the US and actually kicking on is not actually very high either. But guys, we'll be back with more interesting topics and things to discuss and chop up when it comes on to football. It's going to be a hot summer when it comes on to football. The Gold Cup is coming up. Jamaica is going to be playing friendlies next month. It's almost next month, the month 2023. It's moving very quickly. Siobhan, thank you for joining us today, Sports Prophecy TV, and thanks to everyone else that joined us, and see you guys again.
Yeah, no problem, JT. I'm always here if I can.
All right. Thank you, man.